Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to explore MongoDB and how we can set up quickly using Docker through the terminal. Before we start setting up, let's understand what MongoDB is and why it's so popular. MongoDB is a NoSQL database. Unlike traditional SQL databases that store the data in tables and the rows format, MongoDB stores data in a flexible document format very similar to JSON. Each record calls a document contains a key value pairs. This flexibility means you don't have to define a strict structure before inserting your data. You can start quickly and adjust your structure as your project grows. Now, why do developers love MongoDB? The first point is it can scale easily when your data grows. MongoDB supports horizontal scaling using a method called sharding. This means when the amount of data becomes very large, MongoDB can split and distribute it across multiple servers, handling large traffic and storage without slowing down. Second point is it is fast for reading and writing data. MongoDB is optimized for high performance with operations like inserting, updating, or retrieving data. Because it doesn't follow strict schemas or heavy transactions like relational databases, simple read and write operations happen much faster. MongoDB is ideal for the projects where data structure can change over time. In MongoDB, documents inside the same collection can have different fields. This is very helpful for the startups or the fast changing apps where your data model may need frequent changes without big database migrations. Now, there are different ways to use MongoDB, like for example, local installation. You can directly install the MongoDB directly on your machine if you prefer working offline. Another way is MongoDB Atlas. Atlas is a fully managed cloud database service by the MongoDB. It handles all the server setup, backups, security, and the scaling automatically. The third way is Docker setup that we will discuss today in this video. You can run MongoDB inside a Docker container, which makes setup very easy and portable. Another way is MongoDB Compass. If you prefer not to use the terminal, MongoDB Compass provides a graphical interface where you can manage your database visually. Another ways are connecting to a remote server or via SSH tunnel. So there are multiple ways, but in this video, we will discuss about the Docker setup. Now, let's quickly understand the MongoDB basic structure. First of all, we have a cluster. Cluster is the highest level. It could be a single server or a group of servers working together. Next one is database. Inside a cluster, you can have a multiple databases. Each database is like a separate project. For example, a database called e-commerce. Next, we have collection. Each database contains a collection. A collection is like a group where similar documents are stored. For example, a collection named products. Next is document. A document is a single record inside a collection. Example, as you can see on the screen. Next one is fields. Fields are the key value pairs inside a document. In this example above, name and the price are the fields. MongoDB allows documents inside the same collection to have different fields. This gives developer more freedom compared to traditional SQL databases. Now let's quickly recap what we have discussed till now. MongoDB is flexible, fast, and scalable. It's perfect for the modern apps with dynamic data. There are many easy ways to use, like for example, local, cloud, Docker, GUI, and remote. Now that we have understand the basics, let's move to the main part, setting up MongoDB using Docker and access it through the terminal. Let's start by spinning up a MongoDB server inside a Docker container. We will use the following command: docker run. This particular command tells the Docker to start a new container. After that, we will write -d. This runs the container in a detached mode, meaning it runs in the background. After that, we will write --name MongoDB container. This gives your container a friendly name so that you can easily manage or reference it later. After that, we will define the machine port and the container port. This particular command maps your machine port 27017 to the container's port 27017, which is the default port MongoDB listens on. After that, we will write the MongoDB image. So this is the official MongoDB image from the Docker Hub. If it's not already downloaded, Docker will automatically fetch it inside your local machine. Now let's execute this particular command, but before executing it, you need to install this Docker desktop app. So I will provide a link in the description so that you can download it easily. After downloading this particular app, you can just execute this particular command. So as you can see, it unable to find the image Mongo locally. So it was pulling directly from the internet. So after running this particular command, you can see inside this Docker desktop that our container is running perfectly. And also you can run this particular command docker ps so that you can just see all the information about your running containers. Now that MongoDB is running inside the Docker container, you will need a client to connect it. This is where Mongoose comes in. Mongoose is the MongoDB shell. It lets you run the commands like creating databases, adding data, and querying collection. If you don't already have it, if you don't already have it installed, you can run this command brew install mongoose. So this particular command will install this mongoose shell inside your local machine. Now our mongoose is successfully installed. Let's start this mongoose shell. So here's what happened. Mongoose looks for the MongoDB server running at the local host on the port 27017, which matches what we exposed from the Docker. It opens an interactive shell that lets you start typing MongoDB commands right away. You can also explicitly tell the MongoDB server port by directly running this particular command. This explicitly tells the shell to connect to the local MongoDB server running on that particular port. Now let's say you want to keep your host machine clean. You don't want to install anything extra. You don't want to install this mongoose shell inside your local machine. Then you can also use this mongoose from inside the same Docker container. You can run this particular command. This particular command runs this shell inside that particular container. At this point, you are connected to the MongoDB server either from your local machine or from inside the container. When you are done with the MongoDB, you can stop and remove the container. To stop the server, you can run this particular command. This tells the Docker to stop the MongoDB server running in the background. And in order to remove the container, you can run this command. This deletes the container completely, including any unsaved data. Here's a pro tip. Docker containers do not persist data by default. So once you remove the container, the data inside it is gone, unless you mount a volume to save data on your local machine. Now let's start with some basic commands. So first of all, let's see the list of databases that we have currently in our MongoDB server. So in order to do that, we will write this command show databases. So we have admin, config, and the local. Now what is this test? This particular test is also a database. Then you will ask why it will not show when you run the command show databases. It is because there is no collection inside this particular test database. So that's why. If you run this command db, it will tell you the current database you are currently connected to. So basically currently we are connected to the test database. If I create a particular collection, then after that if I execute the command show databases, then the test will be shown. Now let's create a new database. So in order to do that, you can write this particular command use, let's say we create a database called e-commerce. So this will create a database called e-commerce. Now if you write the command show databases, it still didn't show the e-commerce because we didn't create any collection inside this e-commerce database. This particular use e-commerce is the only command in order to create a new database or to switch to a existing database. So for switching and creating, both the commands are same. Now let's create a collection inside our e-commerce database. So first of all, let's clear it. Now we will create a collection name as user. So we have a collection name as user. Now in order to show all the collections that you have inside this database, you will run this command show collections. So we have currently a single collection inside this e-commerce database. Now let's create a document inside this particular collection. So I will write this particular command db.user.insert1, name is John and the age is 25. So we have successfully created a particular document inside our collection. Keep this point in mind that MongoDB will create the collection automatically if it doesn't already exist. Now let's write this command again, show databases. So you can see this e-commerce database here because we created a collection inside this particular e-commerce database. If you want to view all the documents inside this particular collection, you can run this command db.user.find. So you can see the data that you have already inserted. Now, if you want to delete the data, you can drop the collection or the database. So in order to drop a collection, you will write this command db.user.drop. So if you run this command, show collections, so nothing will be shown. Now let's see how we can define the users and the roles in our database. To understand how MongoDB handles users and the roles, let's imagine a typical setup. You have two separate MongoDB clusters. Each cluster has three different servers and the nodes. Each server runs three different databases. Now, where you create your user and how you assign roles decides what that particular user can access and what actions they are allowed to take. In MongoDB, we usually define users at three levels. First one is the cluster wide. This includes the replica set or the sharded setup in the cluster. In the case of the replica set, when you create a user in any database, either admin or a non-admin database on the primary node, that user is automatically replicated to all nodes in the replica set. This ensures consistent access control across the cluster. In the case of the sharded cluster, the user is managed through the Mongoose router and stored in the config server replica set. The config server holds the metadata for the user and the role management across the entire cluster. We will explore both of these scenarios in detail in the upcoming replica set and the sharded section. Currently, we will discuss the two other ways, that is creating users at the node level or the server level, or creating users at the individual database level. And we will also look at how we can create custom roles also. Now, let's start with the node level user. This is the most common type for all developers who need access to all the databases on that particular server. So as we know that node or the server can have multiple databases, so there is an admin database in every node and the server, and we can create a user in that particular admin database so that we can access any database on that particular server. This admin database is already present in every node or the server. It's not a custom database. So first of all, let's go to the admin database and then we will create a user over here. So this is the command to create a particular user. In this, we will define a user and the password and the roles that we want to give and the database name, that is the admin database. This database is where we search for the roles. This read write any database role is available in admin database. If the role you specify isn't present in that particular database, MongoDB will throw an error while creating that particular user. The user credentials are only used at the time of login. That's it. They don't decide what access you have. After login, MongoDB checks the role assigned to that particular user before executing any command. Now, there are two types of roles. Database specific roles like read, read write, these are available in every database. But global roles like read any database, read write any database, these roles are only exist in the admin database. So when we create a user and assign a global role, we mention admin as the database. Global roles allow access to all databases, not just admin. But if you assign a database specific role like read write and mention the admin database, then the user can only read and write in the admin database, not the others. And also while creating the global roles, you can create it with any user. It's not necessary you have to create the user in admin.db. Let's take a scenario for better clarity. You create a user in the X database. You assign this user the read write role on the Y database. While assigning the role, make sure role exists in the Y database. Otherwise, you will get an error. These standard roles, read, read write, are usually available in every database by default. Now, if you want to log in using the credentials of that particular user created in X, you must mention X as the authentication database during login. After login, the user can only read and write to the Y database. They cannot access the X database even though the user was created there. This creates a user in the admin database and gives them the ability to read and the write in any database on that particular server. Now let's log in as that particular user. So let's exit from this particular Mongo and try to log in again with the particular credentials of that particular user. So we have provided the node user as the username, node pass as the password, and we have mentioned the database from where you have to find the particular credentials. So now we have successfully logged in with this particular username and the password. Let's switch to the sales database, let's say, and there we will create a particular collection name as orders and try to insert a particular record. So we execute this particular command. We have successfully executed it. Let's say we move to some another database, and here also we try to create a collection and insert a entry. So the collection name would be, let's say, stock. So we have successfully created. So basically for that particular user, node user and the node password, we can read and write in any database. Because we use the read write any database role, the user can perform operations on any database. Now let's say you want to create the user per database level. You want to limit access to a single database, say ProductDB. You can create a user within that specific database. But there is a slight problem in demonstrating this. Currently, we have run the MongoDB in a Docker container without authentication enabled. So access control is completely bypassed. Anyone can read, write any database. We need to pass the auth flag to the MongoDB command inside the container. So first of all, let's create the container again with the auth enabled. So we have created the container. Now let's log in with the admin credentials. So here, as you can see, we have enabled the auth. Now, first of all, let's move to the ProductDB database and then create the user inside this particular ProductDB database. So we have successfully created the user. Now let's log in through the ProductDB credentials. If you move to the ProductDB database and let's say we create a collection name as product and insert a document name of the product. Oh, there is a syntax error, 1 second. Again, syntax error. So see, we have successfully created the collection and we have successfully inserted the document. Let's say we move to some another database, let's say stocks, and we have a collection name as stock and we want to insert some document over here, maybe the name of the stock, HDFC. So see, you are not authorized to use this particular database, so you cannot read or write in this particular database. Now let's log in back with the root user. And now we will see how we can create the custom role and then use that particular custom role. One important point before we execute some commands: custom roles can only be created by a user who has admin level privileges on a database where the role is being created. So let's say if you want to create a custom role inside the ProductDB, then we have to create a user who provide the admin level privileges to the ProductDB. Log in with that particular user, and then after that we can create a custom role inside that ProductDB. You can see this particular role So this will provide the admin level privileges to the product DB. Now here we have already moved to the root user, so we don't have to worry about the admin privileges. Let's move to the admin database and then create a custom role. So this is the syntax for creating the custom role. So first of all, we have defined the name of the role, that is the insert reader, let's say, and we have provided the database, that is the logs DB, and the collection name would be the events. And we have provided only two actions, insert and find. Now let's try to use this particular custom role. Let's move to the logs DB database and create a user with this particular custom role. So the username would be the log user and the password would be the log password, and the role would be the insert reader, and the DB is the admin because this particular insert reader role is defined under the admin database. Let's log in through this particular user. If you execute this command, actually we are in the test database, so that's why it doesn't allow us to insert any document in the test database. So let's move to the logsdb database first and then execute this command. So we have successfully insert the document inside the collection named as the events. If you want to find inside the events collection, then you can also do that. But if you want to delete the document from the event collection, then you can't do it because you have provided the custom role that allow you to only read and write, but don't allow you to update or delete or any other actions. So this is all about the users and the roles. Regarding to creating users in the case of replicated nodes or the sharded nodes, we will discuss in a little while. Now let's move to the next module, which is indexing. So in this module, we will discuss about what is indexing and how we can create different type of indexing. And we will also see that how we can ensure indexing is in use. So let's start. What is indexing? So think of a giant phone book. Instead of flipping through every page to find a phone number, what we have is AZ tabs, which help us to reach to direct page number where our phone number should be present. So in terms of MongoDB, this AZ is the index. Without an index, MongoDB must scan every single document in the collection to answer a query, and the query becomes slow if the collection is very large. With an index, it jumps straight to the matching documents, like using the AZ tabs in a phone book, so reads are far faster. So first of all, let's insert some data so that we can apply indexing on that particular data. So I will create a database, let's say index db. Now I insert the data. So I've already created this data set. So I've created these 5 documents inside the collection name as the users. Now let's execute one query. So I will find a user whose email ID would be alice@example.com, and also I have append the explain execution stats also, so that we can just find out the information about the query, how this particular query performed. So let's run this particular query. So we have got the result. So in this particular execution stats, as you can see, the stage is the call scan. So that means that each document has been scanned and the total documents examined is 5. So basically currently what this particular query is doing is it will try to go to every document and check whether the email ID is equal to alice@example.com or not. If yes, then it will return the data. So currently, because indexing is not used, so Mongo will try to traverse all the documents of the collection in order to execute that particular query. Now let's try to create an index over here. So I will create a single field index on the email ID, on the email field. So now I have created this particular index. Now let's try to run this above query again. So here, if you see now, you will see the stage would be ix scan. So this would be index scan. So that means
index isn't used. And if you see the total number of documents examined, that is only one. So the Mongo will not try to traverse all the documents, it will only try to traverse single document, which will result in reduce the latency of overall query. It's not like Mongo will always try to traverse only single document. It's just that it will try to traverse less number of documents as compared to before when index is not created. Now let's try to create some another types of indexes also. Let's try compound index. So in the compound index, we will try to create the index on the two fields. So let's say we want to create index over the age and the name also. So we have created the index. Now let's try to execute one query. So if you see, still the stage is ix scan. So that means index is in use. So just this particular stage field, you can just verify that either your index is in used or not. Now let's see one special type of index, that is the TTL index. TTL is the time to live index. TTL index not just help us in searching the documents fast, but it also help us to set a time after which documents will get automatically deleted. So this is the query. Here you have to mention the field whose type should be date. Otherwise TTL index won't work. Here we have mentioned expire after seconds to be 86400. So basically after one day, documents will automatically get deleted. Now let's see some another type of indexes. So one is the text index. This index will help you in text search. So basically in our data set we have a bio field, and if we want to filter out the documents based upon a word which is present in the bio field, then this index will be used. So this is the syntax to create the particular index, the text index. So bio is the field on which we have to create the index, and the text is the reserved keyword which you have to mention in order to create the text index. So now our text index has been created. Let's use this particular index. So we try to find out the documents where the bio contains this MongoDB text. So we have mentioned this particular text index over here. So basically $text indicates that we are currently using this particular text index. So now it has successfully given us the result. Another one is 2D sphere index. This index will help you to find the documents whose 2D location is within the given range from a given point. Here the field on which you can apply the index should be the type point. So here in our case, so the location is the field whose type is point. So we will create the index on this particular field, and we will use the keyword here 2D sphere. So the index has been successfully created. Now let's try to run a query. This query will return the documents whose location is within the 5000 meters, that is the 5 kilometer of the point 77.6, 12.91. The distance is always measured in the meters by default, and the calculation is done based upon the spherical geometry of the earth. You can also check all the indexes that you have already created so far. So this will give you all the indexes. And if you want to analyze any query performance, then you can just use the explain function. Basically, if you add the explain in front of every query, then it will give you the analytics about this particular query, the statistics about this particular query. And if you go down, then you can see the stage equal to ix scan, which tell you that indexes has been used. So this is all about the indexes. Now let's move to the next module, that is the replica. So in this particular module, we will learn how the MongoDB replication works. We will set up the replica set using the Docker. In MongoDB, a replica set is a group of servers that all store the same data, but with different roles. One node is the primary. It handles all the write and the read operation by default. The other nodes are the secondaries. They replicate the data from the primary. If the primary fails, MongoDB automatically elects a new primary from the secondaries. When the old primary comes back online, it rejoins as the secondary and syncs data from the new primary. So replica set gives you high availability, because if any node is not available, then another node can serve the request, as each replicated node has the same data. Automatic failover. If any node died, then automatically any another secondary node get elected to be primary and serve the request. So first, let's set up the Docker network. So basically, to allow our MongoDB containers to communicate, we will first have to create a dedicated Docker network. So in order to create it, we will write a command docker network create Mongo RippleNet. So this particular network already exists because I've already created it. You can just create this particular network through this particular command. This is the virtual bridge network. The containers can refer to this particular network in order to communicate with each other. So all the three MongoDB nodes that we will create will be attached to this particular same network. We will now launch the three MongoDB containers, each configured to be part of a replica set called as RS0. So this is the one container, another one is this, and another one is this. So all are the part of the RS0 replica set, and each one referred to the same network, that is the Mongo RippleNet. So if we go to the Docker desktop, so here you can see our three Docker containers are running. We have exposed the port 27017 only for the first container Mongo1 to connect from the host machine. Let's now initialize the replica set from the first node. So let's connect our local host machine from the Mongo1 container. After that, we will run this command. So rs initiate start the replica set with the three members. The host names match the container names thanks to the Docker network. Now let's see the status of our replica set. So as you can see, we have one primary node, that is the Mongo1, and Mongo2 and the Mongo3 are the secondary ones. So the sync source host is the Mongo1 for both of the two secondaries. Now let's try to insert some data inside the Mongo1 container. So currently we are in the Mongo1 container. So let's move to some database. Let's say we created testdb. And now we have insert the data into the collection name as the users. Sorry, the insert ones is not a function, insert one is the function. So we have successfully inserted the document inside the users collection, inside the testdb database, inside the primary node. Now let's try to read this particular data from the secondary. So because we know that secondary will try to communicate with the primary in order to sync the data, so we should get this particular data from the secondary node also. So now let's move to the new tab and try to log in into the second container. So we are in the secondary container, and now let's move to the testdb. Now show collections. So there is a users collection. So db.users.find. So as you can see, the data is there. So the name Gaurav document we have inserted inside the users collection in the primary node. So as you can see over here, and we can also read it from the secondary node also. So that means the primary and the secondary are in sync. Now let's test what happens when the primary node goes down. So let's try to close this particular primary node, docker stop mongo1. So the mongo1 has been stopped, as you can see in the docker desktop. Now if we go to the secondary one, the mongo2, and try to do rs.status, you can see the Mongo1 is not reachable, Mongo2 has become the primary, and the Mongo3 is the secondary. Now if we bring back the old one, and if we see in the docker desktop, Mongo1 is live, and if we do again the rs.status, we can see the Mongo1 has become the secondary, Mongo2 will remain the primary, and the Mongo 3 is the secondary. We can also control the priority over here. So basically we can just set the Mongo 1 priority to be higher than the Mongo 2. So in case Mongo 1 get back, then at that point of time also Mongo 1 will become the primary node. So this is all about the MongoDB replication. Now let's focus on the MongoDB sharding. Sharding helps you to split the data horizontally across multiple nodes. When your dataset becomes too large, storing everything on a single MongoDB node can lead to performance issues. All requests hit the same node, creating a bottleneck. You might think of solving this using replication, where the same data is copied across multiple nodes. This helps distribute read load. But if your system is write heavy, replication becomes a challenge. Every write has to be synchronized across all the replicas, causing delays in the read operation. It also introduces complexity in maintaining consistency. Instead, MongoDB offers sharding, which splits your data across multiple shards. Each shard holds a portion of the data. This avoids bottleneck, load is evenly distributed, the system becomes more scalable. You can further strengthen the system by replicating each shard, ensuring both performance and availability. Till now, we have seen the importance of the sharding, but now let's see how MongoDB handles the routing. As we have sharded the data across multiple nodes, then we have to know where to redirect the incoming request. When a request comes in, it needs to know which shard to go to, which database collection is sharded, what the shard key ranges are. But how does MongoDB manage this routing? So for this, we have introduced a config server, a central source of truth that stores the list of shards, shard key, and chunk range metadata, sharded collection info. It does not handle actual data, but instead stores metadata required for routing. But there is one more problem. You don't want every request to hit the config server directly. That would create a bottleneck, as all the crucial information is stored inside the config server. So to handle this, we add a gateway in front of the config server, known as the Mongoose router, which is stateless, lightweight, and can handle high traffic, act as a gateway for all the client requests. The Mongoose router communicates with the config server once to fetch shard metadata, store this info in its own RAM, and uses this cache metadata to route further requests efficiently. If the router can't find something in the memory, it asks the config server and updates the RAM. If the router goes down, you can simply spin up a new one. Since it's stateless, it reloads all the necessary info from the config server at startup. For this video, we will set up a config server, a Mongoose router, and two shards. So first of all, let's create a Docker private network so that all our containers will communicate over a common network. So actually I've already created this particular network, so that's why it shows already exist. Otherwise network will be set up successfully. Now let's set up the config server. So here I have initialized the container for the config server with the name config svr. We have uses the Mongo shard network and expose this container to external environment with the port 27019, and the internal port is also 27019. We have used the MongoDB image v7 as an official image, but I know you guys are thinking that how does it different from the regular Mongo container. So basically, for making this container a config server, I have added the flag config svr over here, which turn on the config server mode. And I also call this particular replica set as the config replica set. Now let's open the shell for this particular container. If I go to the Docker environment, Docker desktop, config server container is running successfully. Now let's initialize the replica set over here. So I have initialized only one replica set for the config server. Basically for the production, you have to initialize at least 3, but currently for the simplicity, I have just initialized the one replica set. And also keep this point in mind that this particular config replica set name is same as this particular config replica set that I have mentioned over here. Now, if you go to the config database, show collections, you will see the collection name as chunks and the shards. If you go to this collections, you will find nothing because we haven't set up anything till now. Now let's create two shards for our use case. So I have created this one shard with the same Mongo network, and I have exposed this particular container with 27018 port. So the external port is 27018 and the internal one is 27017. And the replica set name would be shard1rs. Here, to make this particular container as a shard, we have mentioned this dash dash shard svr flag over here. So for creating config server, you have to mention dash dash config svr. For creating a shard, you have to mention dash dash shard svr. These flags are used to define the role of that particular container. Now let's initialize the second shard. Now, if you go to this Docker desktop, then you can see that two containers are running, shard1 and the shard2. So the shard1 external port is 27018 and the shard2 external port is 27017. But internal port are same for both of the shards. We map shard1 to 27018 on the host so that it doesn't clash with the shard2. Now let's open the shell for the shard1 and initialize the replica set. So for the simplicity in this case also, we have just initialized one replica set. Now let's open the shell for the shard2 also and initialize the replica set over here too. Now we have initialized the two shards and one config server. Now let's initialize the Mongo router. Here we have created the Mongo router also with the Mongo image, but Mongo version 7 Docker image bundles all the MongoDB executable files like MongoD, which is the storage and the database server, Mongoose, which is the router, and Mongo, which is a shell from which client will execute their commands inside the container. So basically, because we want only the router, so that's why I have mentioned Mongo 7.0 Mongoose. We have named this particular container as Mongo's router and provided the Docker network that we have created earlier. And after that, we will tell the router where our config server is. So if we have multiple config server, then we will provide all the config server information to this particular command. But currently we just have only one config server. So that's why we just write this particular command over here. So this config db is mandatory in order to mention the config server address. And if you go to the Docker desktop, then you can see this Mongo router container, which is live. So if you see in the Docker desktop, then all the containers have different external port. So the config server has 27019, shard1 has 27018, shard2 has 27017, and Mongo's router has 27020. So the internal port can clash because they are internally, but external port should be different so that there won't be no clash because all the containers are present in same network. If you see in the Mongo's router command, then you will see no replica set over here. So it's because Mongo's router is a stateless. Router keeps zero data on disk, so no replica set or storage flags. If you restart the Mongo router, then it requeries the config server and repopulates its RAM cache. Now all our containers are running. Let's jump into the router shell so that it can manage the whole cluster. But one second. Now you will be thinking like, when we create the router container, then we just mention the Mongoose, which only give us the router. Then how does we able to run the shell inside the router container? Actually, starting the container with Mongoose, just pick the first tool to run. That is the Mongoose router. When the container boots, it launches the router program. The other two programs are still on the disk inside the container. Docker exec is like opening a second terminal inside the same container when you execute this particular command. You are simply starting a new process inside the container, which can freely run the Mongoose library that's already there. Because the shell is pre-installed in the image, it just works, nothing special to install. So the router keeps routing and your shell runs side by side. There will be two separate processes in one container. Before organizing our cluster, let's once again go to the config server and check, is there any shards or is there any chunks? So everything is empty for now. Now let's register the shards so that router is aware of that particular shards. So we have added the first shard. Now let's add the second shard also. Now if we go to the db.shards.find, then you can see two shards are registered as a metadata in the config server. Now, what actually happens? Mongo's router write the two new documents into the config.shards collection through a metadata write. Routers update their RAM cache instantly. Only the router can modify the shard collection. Shards themselves never write to config.shards. The router does that on their behalf. Now, if we go to our router and if we do sh.status, we have add this particular verbose colon 1 to add more lines for the explanation. Now here if you see that two shards are registered, shard 1 RS, shard 2 RS. If you go down, then you can see that config.system.session collection is sharded already. MongoDB automatically shard this collection. Data is split based upon the ID field. Here, unique is equal to false. That means duplicate IDs across the chunks are allowed. We have balancing equal to true. That means MongoDB is allowed to move the chunks for the load balancing. We have the chunk metadata. That shows that which shard owns how many chunks. Here, shard 1 RS owns one chunk. After that, we have chunks information. So basically, we have only one chunk and it cover all the IDs from the min key to the max key. And all the data currently lives on the shard 1 RS. Now, if you go to the config router, so the config server, and if you do db.chunks.find, then you will find single chunk. This chunk is associated with the config.system.sessions. So the min and max key would be the min key and max key, and the shard is only one, shard 1 RS. So this particular contain only one chunk, and this particular chunk is currently reside under the shard 1 RS. Now let's enable the sharding on a database. Let's say we want to shard a database called as shopdb. So if we go to the config and if we write db.databases.find, then you will find nothing. Now let's shard a database. sh.enable sharding shopdb. So we have enabled the sharding on a shopdb database. Now if we go to the db.databases.find, then we can see that shopdb is sharded and the primary shard would be shard 2 RS. Here db.database.find will only show the custom databases you have created. Now let's add the status command. Now here you can see in the databases that shopdb is added in the database array. So basically this particular database is sharded. Now till now we have sharded a particular database. Now let's shard a particular collection. So the collection name would be orders and we will shard it based upon the user ID. Now if we again check the status, then you can see that inside the shopdb database there is a collection shopdb orders whose shard key would be the user ID and the chunk metadata is currently reside under the shard 2 RS. So basically in the chunk metadata you can see that there is only one chunk and it is currently reside under the shard 2 RS. And the chunks information is that the minimum user ID to the maximum user ID is currently present under the shard 2 RS. So here we have two databases, that is the config database and the shopdb database. Both are sharded currently. Now if we again go to the config and check, then this is same. If we go to db.collections.find, then you can see that two collections are sharded currently. config.system.sessions, one is shopdb.orders, and you can see this information from here also. So this particular collection is sharded and this particular collection is also sharded. Now let's try to move the chunk to the another shard. So basically from min key to max key, all the data is currently under the shard 2 RS. Now let's split this particular chunk into two parts so that we have two chunks and we can show the load balancing over here. So basically from min key to the, let's say x value, we want the data to be present in one shard. From x to max value, we want the data to be present in second chart. So let's say the X would be 5000. So we split this particular chunk from min key to the 5000, min key to the 5000, from 5000 to the max key. So we will split this particular chunk using this split at. So we have splitted the chunk. Now if we see the status again, then you can see that we have created two chunks from min key to the 5000, from the 5000 to the max key. But currently both the chunks lie on the SHA-2 RS. Now let's move a chunk to the another shard. sh dot move chunk. Actually, I was facing some issues. Basically, there was some timeout issues while shifting a particular chunk to another shard. So what I've done is that I've removed the 5000 and I split the chunk from min key to the 5 and 5 to the max key. So now this particular operation move chunk is successfully run. If we go to the, if we check the status, then we can see that from min key to the 5, the data is present on the SHA-2 RS, and from 5 to the max key, the data is present in the SHA-1 RS. Now if we check the databases, there is a ShopDB database. Let's use this particular database, ShopDB. If we execute the command show collections, then there is a order collection. Now let's insert a document over here. Let's say I insert a document user ID 1 and the name would be, let's say, Gaurav. So I have successfully inserted the data. Now because this particular user ID is 1, then it is present in the first chunk, that is from min key to the 5, and that data should be present on the SHA-2 RS. Now if we go to the SHA-2 RS and if we check show DBs, then you can see that there is a ShopDB collection now, ShopDB database now. If we go to the ShopDB database, show collections, db.orders.find, then you can see the data is present over here. If we go to the shard1 show DBs, then there is the ShopDB database also over here. And if we see under this particular database, use ShopDB show collections db.orders.find, so there is nothing. Now let's add another document, and this time we put the user ID as 6. Now let's check it over here. So now you can see that this particular user ID 6 is present in the shard1 because from user ID 5 to the max key, the data is present in the SHA-1 RS. If we go to the SHA-2 RS and if I do db.orders.find, then you can see that it contains only the documents from the user ID min key to the 5. So till now, we have seen the introduction to the MongoDB, its setup part, core MongoDB operations, users, roles, indexing, replicas, and sharding. In the next video, we will create a Node.js project where we will create the MongoDB infrastructure, including config server, router, shards, replicas, and connect this infrastructure to the Node.js and see how to manage the configuration and scaling, how to backup, restore, and manage the data. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please try to do all the operations by yourself. And if you have any doubts, then please put them over the comments or DM me over the Discord.